No, good point. Yeah, we're not just out to look out for ourselves. She brought up the reality of danger of others and violence being committed to others, and what's our responsibility to them. Very, very, very good question. Yeah. What do you guys think? It's easy for me to talk about pacifism. I've never been near a war. It's really easy. Oh, well, you pray about it. But there is a fundamental question here. What are we trusting in to bring about justice? Do we believe that God will establish a kingdom of righteousness and justice on this earth? Do we believe that we're going to establish that? Or is there a difference?
I think that we can be the tools that God uses to establish his kingdom on the earth.
What's that?
We can be the tools that God uses to establish his kingdom on this earth.
Yeah.
So if through whatever means he wants to use, like whether it's peace or war, or like whatever, right?
Yeah.
So we're always, like, it'll look like it may be us and people will think that it's us, but I think that it'll be God using us.
Yeah, he said that people could be used by God to establish his kingdom on earth. So that is, in a sense, God establishing his kingdom. And yes?
Part of what I think is also that our roles as Christians and the rest of the world's roles are different. So I don't think that Christians are called to fight. I don't think that Christians should go to war. But I also don't think that we should try to change the world from down. So we can't say no one should fight if we don't try. So part of in perspective of the world, we can't expect everyone to live how we should live. And so I think that there's distinction in that we may not fight, but God may use wars, but I'm not going to go kill someone. I'm not going to say that God can't work through a war, but I don't think that we are called to kill people.
What about where God sent the Israelites to war, though? Like, there's so many times in the Old Testament, especially when they're traveling through the desert, where they were sent in, and God said, destroy these cities like men, women, and children. And to us, that sounds like a pretty violent, vile thing, but that's who God is, and obviously our ways are different than his, but I think that God can definitely call us to war as Christians, and we don't like to think about murdering and stuff like that, but I think war is different than murder. But at the same time, I don't think we should glorify it, but I think that we can definitely be used as Christians in that situation. And even if we are in a situation where we have to fight for our lives and the lives of other people, I still think it's possible to show love to other people through that, whether by showing the people that were expected to kill mercy in that situation. I still think that we can be called to war and be Christians while we're there.
We've got two different perspectives here. One fellow who is, if I may try to summarize, God could use us not only as people, but as Jews or even as Christians to fight in a war and to achieve his will. Is that right?
Well, generally, I was just saying that I don't think we should overlook, because God is so many different. He's not just one way all the time, right? He has his eternal self, but he doesn't just work through one way. He doesn't work just through peace. And we see that through the Bible. He did use peace and love, but he also used war and all that kind of stuff. But he didn't use it in different terms than we did, I think. I don't really understand why he sent his life to war and everything like that, but I don't think we can overlook that and say it's wrong to have war, because it says there's a time for everything. And so I think as Christians we need to be involved in everything. Not every Christian is a soldier, not every Christian is a musician, but there's definitely a time and place for it, I think, in this world.
He's bringing up, I think, a verse from Ecclesiastes, a time for war, a time for peace. And what my sister brought up is that yes, there may be a time for war, and there may be people who are part of the plan that are fighting wars, but not me, not as a follower of Jesus. I don't feel that's my responsibility, but it's also not my responsibility to put an end to governments that believe in that sort of power or through whom God may be working. I just feel it's a simple, clear call from Jesus that, okay, you have heard it said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. That was the time for that, in a sense. That was the time for war. But I say to you, love your enemies and do good to those who persecute you. That is to say, now is a time of peace. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think for me, the difficulty that I face with the question of violence isn't so much about war or governments or, you know, really large superpowers fighting each other, but it's like, I come from the inner city where we have a church on a block that has very heavy drug trade, and, you know, there are shootings day in and day out, and, you know, I have a little friend at church, and he's about to turn 14, and he told me that he's afraid to turn 14 because everyone he knows who turns 14 dies. And the question that I have is kind of like her question over here is, what do you do about people who face violence every day that are your friends and your neighbors? And how do you protect them without engaging in violence yourself? When you don't feel called to violence, you know, and yet you have your neighbors saying, what do I do when people want to fight me, when people jump me with a baseball bat, you know, when they want me to sell drugs for them? I mean, it just becomes a very personal issue and not so much an issue of war or armies or things like that. And so that's really my question, is what you do in daily life when violence is a problem.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a good question as well. What do you guys think? She said pray. That's a good one. That's a good answer. Whoever said that was onto something. Pray. Pray. I mean, really pray. Really, actually pray. Yes? You want to put the microphone?
My thought on this, I think that, for me, it clarifies things for me anyways, is that what is this war against? You know, is it against, because of the war in Iraq, that's our vision of warfare, that's very physical, death, and overthrowing governments, and I think the Christian faith is not about any of those things. It's not about physical harm or death to anyone at this point, because Jesus came to conquer death, and now it's about turning 180 and seeing us as a people, the Genesis, of really restoring and reclaiming who we are as one community of people all over the world. So for me, the war is spiritual, only in nature. It's not physical at all. And I think what she said about people that are facing things like this on the streets in the inner city, that those are spiritual things. These aren't physical things that are happening. I mean, yes, the repercussions of some of this stuff is physical in nature, but the root of everything is spiritual. And